I think if I were back in the service now, I'd be tearing my hair out at the situation.
And no wonder. We've discovered that on average throughout last year, 2/3 of the 15-strong Nimrod fleet were effectively grounded. By the Ministry of Defence's own admission, that means only 5 out of 15 were fit for purpose.
In terms of aircraft availability, today we have 6 aircraft up at Kinloss available for the crews to fly, which is the best we've had for the last 9 months. And I think that is actually indicative of the effort that we've put into the whole of the fleet up at Kinloss.
But with 2/3 of the fleet grounded on average last year, I mean, are you happy with that?
No, I'm not happy with it.
The big problem is lack of spares, and all the ground crew can do if they have to get something airborne, and this is just common sense, is to cannibalise the other aircraft that are sitting on the tarmac.
That's okay for maybe the one-off occasion, or maybe 1 or 2 occasions, but when it becomes the only way that you can actually keep your fleet running is by robbing half the fleet. So you've got half the fleet unserviceable to keep the other half going. The service is at total overstretch. It's been committed to too many tasks with inadequate resources. They're trying to do a full pint job with half a pint of resources, and that cannot go on. It has to change.
It's costing a staggering £3 million a year to maintain each plane. Last year, the government pledged even more money, but it may be too late. There's another problem. Disillusioned aircrew are leaving the service in droves.
5 years ago, it would be very rare for people to leave the RAF voluntarily. Recently, nearly every senior pilot in the training unit put in a request to leave. These are guys that are military through and through. If they're jumping ship, you've got to ask yourself why.
All those of us in the UK with military experience who have the interests of our country at heart are horrified to see the extent to which our hard-working, devoted services are being prostituted by inadequate levels of understanding and support.
The Parliamentary Defence Select Committee actually acknowledged last year, before the crash, that there were critical weaknesses in the readiness levels of the Nimrod fleet. The harsh truth is there's simply no alternative, although there was supposed to be.
The RAF's 25-year-old Nimrod maritime patrol aircraft is to be updated with new engines and avionics following the award of a £2 billion contract to British Aerospace in July.
Way back in 1996, the Ministry of Defence acknowledged the Nimrod was past her best and announced an expensive facelift for the fleet.
The new systems will keep the aircraft effective well into the next century.
Sounds impressive. So where is it? Well, successive governments have kept tinkering with the order, causing one delay after another.
I seem to remember the replacement of the Nimrod talked about in the 80s, when we had the Iron Curtain and they hunted submarines around the North Sea. For it to take this long and still not to be in service, I think it's embarrassing. I think it's embarrassing for the nation. I think it's appalling that we haven't sorted this out.
This is the new Nimrod on a test flight last year. The whole project is now nearly £2 billion over budget and more than a decade late. It's a mess that could ultimately have cost the lives of 14 men with 200 years of military service between them.
If we don't see the new Nimrods until 2011, I don't think, at the rate we're being asked to work at the moment, that we'd be able to nurse the old fleet till then. But what's worse, in my view, is that we wouldn't have lost 14 men over Kandahar if they'd been flying in the new Nimrod. I don't think they would have been killed.
Why should these people put themselves at risk on our behalf when we can't get what they deserve, which is a good airframe. You've got an aircraft that's extremely old. The guys that maintain it, the guys that look after it, the senior commanders, they're doing what they can to keep that thing flying, as long as they can until we get the replacement.
Which prompts a bigger question about the role the Nimrod's being asked to fulfil out in the Middle East. Should Britain still be sending crews on spying missions at all when a similar job is done by our coalition partners without putting any military lives at risk? This is how the Americans do it. From a bunker somewhere deep in the Nevada desert, a pilot controls a small, unmanned surveillance aircraft, the Predator, thousands of miles away in the Gulf. The Nimrod can only fly for 10 hours before it has to refuel. But with the Predator, that's not a problem.
You can put these planes up for 24 hours or 48 hours, and you can constantly fly them in a circle, and over time, there's no break in that surveillance time. When you're in a field of battle, obviously it saves lives. Anytime you're in a military situation where somebody may be shooting at you, it will save lives.
There's absolutely no risk of body bags coming home at the end of a mission.
We don't have to worry about that so much anymore. You can use an unmanned aerial vehicle and not put your men and women at risk who are serving you in the military.
The US values them so much they've bought 3,000. And Britain? Well, for 3 years, RAF pilots have been flying on Predator missions with the US. But it was only recently that the Ministry of Defence found the money to buy 3. Yet according to our whistleblower, much of the surveillance work he and his colleagues risked their lives for in the Nimrod could be done by the Predator.
For most of the operations we undertake, an unmanned drone like the Predator could do about 80% of what we do without putting a crew of 14 at risk. We knew these men, and it's very hard to accept that fact.
What we're doing now is buying 3 Predator, the advanced Predators, which will give us a massive increase in capability. That will be able to take some of the stress off the Nimrods in the future.
And reduce the risk to aircrew. We don't necessarily have to be up there for all these missions.
You're absolutely right. And that's one of the great benefits of unmanned air vehicles.
14 experienced servicemen made the ultimate sacrifice for their country. But might they still be alive if Britain had spent the money on a modern fleet of spy planes? A crucial question that the Board of Inquiry isn't even considering.
Gary joined the Air Force to serve his country. He was probably one of the most patriotic people I know. He would have willingly put his life on the line for his country to do his job, and that's what he did do. But if this was a technical fault, he was not supposed to die as a result of a technical fault.
Shelley Joffrey reporting. The MOD's official accident report is thought unlikely to appear until September or even later, a full year after the crash happened. Next week, Britain's biggest arms deal. The investigation may have been called off, but Panorama carries on digging.